The time for practicing against your teammates is over, and now the real test is about to begin. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders. I am David Harrison, your guy on the ground covering the Washington Commanders for WUSA 9 and doing it right here with you 5 days a week. You can also find me writing about the Washington Commanders at commandergameday.com, part of Sports Illustrated's family of sites, and you can follow me on X at dharrison82. I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or your first view. And a special thank you goes out to all of the everydayers, those of you who come through every single day for every single episode. We're going on like 10, 11 days in a row of episodes right now. So a little bit more than 5 days a week going on right now. But there's a lot to talk about. Appreciate you for coming through for all of the episodes. If you haven't already, anybody out there, please make sure you are subscribed for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's episode. If it's your first time coming through, I want to appreciate you. I want to thank you for coming through, for finding the show. Hopefully you like what you hear and you come back again real soon. Coming up on today's episode, we're going to talk about coach goals and players to watch in New England, but it's all starting with what the joint practice against the New England Patriots represents. All of that is coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. A little bit of an admin note. This episode, I'm going to be driving to Massachusetts all day Tuesday. Yes, I'm driving. I'm not flying. A couple members of my family are coming with me. We're going to do a little sightseeing on the day off before the game. So we're all headed up to Massachusetts. So since I'm going to be driving all day, I want to get this episode done before we hit the road and drop it for you late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, however that's going to fall. But so what that means is any news that drops basically during Tuesday is going to have to wait until our next episode, which will come after practice on Wednesday. So don't know what kind of news could drop, right? But there certainly could be some news that drops. So a little bit of an admin note, but we're talking about heading to Foxborough, right? That's what the whole point of this episode, which is why we can do it a little bit early, because no matter what, we're going to Foxborough. That's not going to change. And the value of joint practices is not going to change either. And that's really where I think this regime has taken a really good step towards putting this franchise in the right direction. Look, every coach, every organization, every leadership group has their own stance and their opinions on things as far as joint practices are concerned. But I think most coaches agree that going up against another team in a controlled environment, you can throw on the pads, you can hit a little bit, you can thump a little bit. But again, it's a controlled environment. Your quarterback's not going to get hit, all of these things. It just gives you a little bit of an advantage. You can put things on the practice field tape that you wouldn't put in a game, and you can do so without necessarily tipping what you're trying to do to your opponents. It's a really great opportunity. And of course, this first joint practice of the season is our first opportunity to see some of these players really go up against live competition. You talk about rookies going up against live NFL competition for the first time. It's a really big step in their development and in their career. So they're heading up Tuesday. We're heading up Tuesday. Practice is happening Wednesday. As soon as the practice is over and press conferences and all that stuff, I'll get hard at work doing everything I need to do to get a show out to you as soon as possible with all the news, notes, and observations that we can bring. Of course, I do expect to see some Commanders fans at the practice because y'all are everywhere, man. Commanders fans are just everywhere. But there's some things the coaches are looking forward to. The offensively, head coach Dan Quinn really looking forward to seeing his offensive unit go up against a new defense and a new challenge. He said on Monday, quote, a different defensive front, how they align would be different than how we do, different style of players, some of you haven't gone against, end quote. And I think that's really kind of the biggest part of this, right? Like you look at a guy like Brandon Coleman, for example, and again, we don't know 100% what his health status is or if he's even going to be out there Wednesday, unfortunately. But if he is, it's going to be his first look at a left as a left guard against a defensive lineman that's not Javon Kinlaw or not one of his teammates, and against a defensive lineman that probably isn't going to sit there and say, hey, young fella, that rep that I beat your butt on, here's how I beat you on it, and here's how you get better, right? He's just going to go out there and beat your butt and not care about it and not feel another way about it. And that's really, over the years, talking to players about the value of these joint practices, that's kind of part of the value is the fact that that dude across from you does not care about you, does not care if you're successful, does not wish you the best, does not wish you well. Like, at the end of the day, that guy across from you wants his team, his logo, the last one standing at the end of the NFL season. He wants you to fall. You're going to lose. You're going to get eliminated at some point. That is his goal. And it's a good test. It's a really good opportunity. We hear Dan Quinn talk a lot about sparring, right? And this is kind of a sparring type of situation. Call it a scrimmage. You can call it whatever you want. But at the end of the day, both sides of this know that if I don't bring my best competition, if I don't bring my A game, if I don't do everything I can to beat you, I'm not making you better. And that is what we're here to do, is make each other better. Of course, the coaches also have the opportunity, like Dan Quinn shared with us, to kind of say, hey, I want to see my guys work on this. Could some of that be weaknesses? Absolutely. So it could be my left side of the offensive line can't pick up stunts. So I want you to stunt that side of the line as much as you possibly can. And you might see this line get beat a little bit. But again, it's all about failing forward, right? A little bit more on that here in just a second from Dan Quinn. And I think that's kind of the important thing to remember while we're watching it. Put that context on the thing that this is an opportunity to challenge the things that Dan Quinn wants to challenge in his team the most. And usually those things are either things that are untested, things that they're anticipating are going to be new to them, or things that they're not as strong on, because you want to try to get better on those things and grow in those things. Defensive coordinator Joe Whitt Jr. added, it's just, quote, it's just good to go against new bodies. And now you can see, all right, are we doing what we need to do, or are we just used to playing a certain group of guys? Can we play our play style on the road? Can we travel with it? End quote. I think that's a really good point by Joe Whitt Jr. as well. Had some questions from insiders, had some questions from other Commanders fans saying like, hey, dude, like we're hearing a lot about like interceptions. We're hearing a lot about like up and down days and the defense, right? These 3-day stretches, the defense has basically won all 3 third days of these 3-day stretches. Now, this third day of the 3-day stretch would be the game, right? So you got to practice on Monday, joint practice on Wednesday, and then the game on Friday. That's the end of that 3-day stretch. So if the defense comes out and wins that third day of the game, you're going to be pretty happy about it, right? You're going to be watching the Washington Commanders defense win against the New England Patriots offense, and that's going to make you pretty happy. And the Joe Whitt Jr. wanting the crowd cheering his defense, he's not going to have to worry about that anymore. It's going to be happening even in Foxborough, right? So very good point from Joe Whitt Jr. there, you know what I mean? And then the questions of, is the offense struggling? Is the defense really that good? How much better is the defensive front? We're going to start to get a lot of those answers starting on Wednesday. So it's a great opportunity. I'm super pumped, looking forward to it. I know some reporters, like, it's kind of like the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl, the practice is the most important part. The game is not all that impressive or not all that important. And to a certain extent, this is the same. The practice is definitely more important than the actual game on Friday, but the game is still important because we're going to see bottom of the roster guys. You're going to see rookies out there getting their first experience, and you can see what they do in a game-like situation. So I think there's still value to both. So we're certainly going to stay for both. I know some are just going for practice. That's okay. Everybody sees it with a different lens. We will be there for the practice and for the game. I can promise you that. Another thing, situational work. The offense ran multiple end-of-game drills on Monday, one ending in that costly interception we talked about on the last episode. Bounced off Chris Moore's shoulder. Trey Amos, the rookie corner, able to take advantage, come up with an interception. Dan Quinn really embraces these moments. He said before the practice, so before that even happened, quote, I also have to remind myself at times like them failing is part of the process. I just want to make sure that's going full speed to do that failing, end quote. And these reps against the New England Patriots are going to be that full speed. He's not excusing false starts, things like that, but he's talking about mistakes that are made when you're going after it. You're fully combative. You're just competing. All right, you made a mistake, but now we can correct that mistake because we can figure out why it happened in the first place. That's what these joint practices are all about. We've fixed some things. At least we feel like we fixed some things. Now let's go find an opponent who's going to show us if we actually fix those things. So with a new opponent comes new tests, and 5 Commanders in particular have a lot to prove this week at practice. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and Locked On Commanders are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Commanders are headed to New England for a high-stakes test against a new opponent, and that kind of pressure is what makes things exciting. It's why I'm trying this new Guillotine League on Yahoo Fantasy. The stakes couldn't be higher. Every week, the lowest scoring team gets eliminated. It forces you to prove that your team is the best week in and week out, just like the Commanders have to do this weekend. So to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. And to kick it off, they are dropping that Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where, again, the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's only one left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. So stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. 5 Washington Commanders that I'm watching very specifically as they go up against the New England Patriots in joint practice and the game later on this week. 5 players that you could say are under the microscope in one way, shape, or another. Here are the 5 players. So Trey Amos is one of them. Josh Conerly Jr., another. Linebacker Kain Medrano. Jayden Daniels, but in the sense of his connection with Luke McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel, and running back Jacory Croskey-Merritt. And it's no coincidence here that 4 of these guys are rookies, right? Again, it's their first taste of NFL opposition, so it's a big opportunity for them. Of course, you want to see some of these other new additions. We want to see Laramie Tunsil stand up to the Patriots pass rush. We want to see Deebo Samuel. Deebo's part of one of these connections, so we'll save him for later. But we want to see Marshawn Lattimore. Like, can he go up there and be a better version of himself? How is Will Harris going to really perform with this defense, right? Is Frankie Louvu going to look like he's already getting unlocked on a next level? So there's a lot of guys. I mean, there's a lot of guys on this roster that we're going to be watching, of course. But I do want to kind of hone in on these 5 guys. So let's start with Trey Amos, right? The number one guy that I'm kind of out here watching. I mean, his stock has been soaring, right? I mean, and it's hard to imagine that it really has been soaring because the second he was picked, I mean, the second his name came across the ticker or you heard his name on the NFL draft broadcast, pretty much everybody has been excited about this dude. And I remember studying him in the pre-draft process. Everydayers who were watching back in the draft, you're going to remember we talked about Trey Amos. We talked about his length, athleticism, the aggression, the fact that he played in 3 different college systems or for 3 different college teams, I should say, 2 systems, because he followed his defensive coaches from one school to another. So 2 systems, 3 schools, either way, thrived in all of them. I think that's a real testament to his maturity, his ability to adapt, right? All those things. And you certainly love seeing it out of him. Trey Amos, or Joe Whitt, rather, coach, defense coordinator, Joe Whitt Jr. said of Trey Amos, quote, "Trey's having a good day. Trey's had a good day every day," end quote. And that really just kind of supports what we've been saying about him, right? When you look at him on the field, you don't see a rookie. And when you look at him, you don't see bad plays. You don't see blown coverages, miscommunications, things like that. What you see is a very physical, very talented, very opportunistic cornerback he's taking advantage of opportunities, right? So we're going to see if he can continue this high level of play against a new set of receivers that he's never gone up against, right? His first rep against Stephon Diggs is going to be his first rep ever against Stephon Diggs, right? He's taking reps against Chris Moore and Luke McCaffrey and Deebo and these guys, right? So let's see how that goes. Kendrick Bourne, another wide receiver that he's going to match up against from time to time here and during the joint practice. So really want to see how they match up. And listen, when we talk about these Patriots players, I do want to make one note. I don't know all their health situations. I know like Christian Gonzalez has like a hamstring thing. So again, I can't tell you if these guys are going to participate or not. I would recommend go to Locked On Patriots, but just looking at the matchups on paper is what we're doing here when we talk about who they're going up against. So again, the Patriots can make a lot of decisions on their own. We're going to hold this guy out for injury. We're going to hold this guy out for whatever reason. But the opportunity, the possibility of seeing Trey Amos go up against guys like Stephon Diggs and Kendrick Bourne, certainly very, very intriguing, something that we're definitely going to be watching. Go to the offensive side real quick. Offensive tackle, right tackle, Josh Conerly Jr. The spotlight's going to be on him. We've been talking about him a little bit. I know other people have been talking about him a little bit. He's one of the ones who's kind of shown that rookie, limitation. But you're an offensive tackle. Offensive tackles, I don't think ever pretty much come into the league and just boom, from day one, they can just lock it down and never get beat and never have a veteran kind of manipulate them and set them up with one move, hit them with a different one, things like that. It's all part of the learning curve. So how are these lessons taking hold, right? He's been going up against Von Miller for over a week now. So when he goes in against the New England Patriots edge rushers, how much has he learned? How much of that is going to teach him what he needs to do? That's going to be a key indicator of his ability to be coached, adapt, and learn, because going up against Harold Landry III when he's out there with the first team, and that's a very, very tough matchup. Harold Landry III, you might remember, formerly the Tennessee Titans, was one of those players that was available. I know a lot of Commanders fans were intrigued by him, interested in him, all these things. So Harold Landry III going up against Josh Conerly Jr. When he's with the first team right tackle, when he's playing first team right tackle, is certainly going to be a matchup worth watching. Linebacker Kain Medrano, had him on the show for yesterday's episode. Obviously, he's been doing really good things. And while Jordan McGee has been out of practice, we don't have full information on that injury, but we do assume that there is an injury involved because Jordan McGee is not vet enough to get 2 rest days in a row, guys. It just is what it is. So this is going to be a big test for him as well as see how he can step up. Joe Whitt Jr. said of his linebacker, quote, now can he consistently do it? That's one thing that we need to see when we go to New England because we know how they're going to try to be a bully ball a little bit, end quote. Yeah, head coach Mike Vrabel, he's known for a lot of things and being one of those tough dudes who likes to put his nose in the dirt and really get after you is definitely one of them. So Kane's going to be facing guys like Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, right? They're going to try to get that safety hybrid linebacker in coverage against some of his receivers. Hunter Henry, the tight end, Austin Hooper, another tight end, Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson. There's a name for Washington fans. At times, like whether it's run fits, whether it's passing, whether it's covering a leak, whatever it is, he's going to be facing a lot of these guys. And then, of course, by the way, the offensive line, right? How can he avoid blocks, shed blocks, get around these guys, sift through the traffic? We've seen him do it against the Commanders offense, but now we get to answer the question. Is it just because he knows the Commanders offense really well? He kind of knows what this lineman's going to do, what this tight end's going to do? Or is it because he's just really that far ahead of probably where anybody expected him to be at this point? Next up, Jayden Daniels and his connection with Luke McCaffrey. Also his connection with Deebo Samuel. He's been connecting with both these guys really, really well. His connection with Deebo has been amazing. I think, I was very excited when Deebo got here. Very excited to see what he and Jayden and Cliff Kingsbury's system could do, but they've even eclipsed what I was hoping for. So on Monday, there's a 2-minute drill. Jayden Daniels targeted Luke McCaffrey on 3 consecutive plays. All 3 of those came down as incompletion. So clearly they're trying to work on that connection, trying to get that better. Luke still looks better than he did last year. Still looks like he's taking that step. This is another opportunity for him to go out there and really shine against another opponent. Cliff Kingsbury, offensive coordinator, had some good things to say about Luke's progress on Monday after practice, said, quote unquote, night and day different from what he was last year. And yeah, I think that shows up on the practice field as well. That chemistry is going to need to show up against New England because he and Deebo are going to be going up against cornerbacks like Carlton Davis III, Christian Gonzalez, again, if they can go, things like that. So very good challenges for them there. And finally, Jacory Croskey-Merritt, the 7th round running back that everybody seems to love. People are raving about his performances, his opportunity to go up against another team. We've talked to him multiple times on the show here during training camp. So you already know if you're an everydayer and you've been seeing those interviews that he is absolutely just chomping at the bit to get after a live opponent. He's going to be going up against Keon White, Harold Landry again, Milton Williams is going to be in the mix, Kyle Duggar, Jabril Peppers, the safeties, right? Things like that. Again, he's listed as the 5th running back, but we already know he's been getting some reps with Jayden in the backfield, especially in those mixed units where you got like some first-team players, some second-team players, things like that. So I don't expect that to change. And then he'll certainly get some looks against the New England Patriots starting defense because at the end of the day, you want to know what you have in this kid. You want to know if the excitement is a flash in the pan or if it's legitimate. Of course, it's not just about player development in these practices. The coordinators have some goals of their own in year 2 with Dan Quinn and the Washington Commanders. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golfing on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action, so why not make it just a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach, or if you want to get sunburned at the beach with them, you can still get in on the game while you're getting sunburned at the beach. Don't recommend it, but hey, you do you. I love using FanDuel because it lets you focus on the details. We just broke down 5 players that are going to be under the microscope this week because it's all about those individual matchups. That's what's cool about FanDuel. You can bet on specific player props like passing yards or touchdowns, and it makes you watch with the same focus that we're going to use to analyze these camp battles this week. So if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Wrapping up today's episode, previewing the joint practices between the Washington Commanders and the New England Patriots in Foxborough, Massachusetts, kicking off on Wednesday. Preseason game happening Friday nights. The offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Whitt Jr., respectively, spoke to the media for the first time this training camp, on the record, I should say, on Monday, and had some things to say, talked about some goals. So looking at what the coordinators are highlighting, what they're focused on following Monday's practice, Cliff Kingsbury is really looking to get consistency out of his offense. He really wants to improve ball security, obviously. Said, quote, I think when you're playing the Eagles, I think we turned it over 9 times against them the last few times we played them. We have to be better and give ourselves a chance to win, end quote. Unfortunately, coming off a practice field where they threw an interception during an end of game situation. So clearly that's not the goal there. Getting consistent with it, getting those reps in against live opponents will help them get consistent with it. I mean, I've never seen a team practice these end of game, end of half, high pressure situations more than this one does. And we saw it that last year, that it really clicked in. It really came in when they needed it the most. So obviously there is a method behind the madness and there is a product behind the persistence to do it. Joe Whitt Jr., defensive coordinator, what he's looking for is to do what's right, don't be right. I love this message from Joe Whitt. He's focused on collaboration this year and using his players to the best of their ability, stating that his personal motto is, quote, let's do what's right, don't necessarily be right. Don't necessarily be right. I'm being very cautious to listen to everybody and make sure I'm doing what's right, not necessarily trying to prove that I am right, end quote. And I think that's, look, for a leader, for a coach, like coaches are expected to be in control, in charge. Leaders are expected to take charge and kind of be that smartest voice in the room. So for Joe Whitt Jr. to kind of take a step back this offseason, look at himself, evaluate himself, and say, you know what? I can delegate a little bit more. I can trust my assistant coaches a little bit more. I can listen to my players a little bit more. I think it's really big of them, and I think it's harder to do a little bit, and it's even harder to admit that publicly because you kind of open yourself up to a little bit of scrutiny. But I'm sure that coaches like Daryl Tapp, Willie Gay Jr., Jason Simmons, like all these guys, they definitely greatly appreciate Joe Whitt Jr. having that kind of approach to his coaching style this year. And look, if it helps make the group better, then it'll all be worth it. One note that we do need to talk about that we're certainly going to be watching, mentioned it on yesterday's episode, but kicking game concerns. Everydayers, if you remember this conversation, because it was so long ago, but it was about the kicking situation. When they brought in Matt Gay, I wasn't necessarily surprised that they brought in what I thought was going to be competition. Then they released Zane Gonzalez, and that's where I got a little bit surprised. Like, all right, so we're just having one kicker in camp. I think competition, especially the kicking position, is always great. You need that pressure on these guys because that's something that can get to them, unfortunately. Matt Gay missed 2 50-plus yard field goal attempts, and I've said it before. I think that's why they brought Matt Gay in. He's got that cannon for a leg, and it gives Dan Quinn optionality and the ability to say, you know what, we're not going to go for it on this 4th down. We're going to kick the field goal instead of having a kicker that maybe doesn't have that range, and you kind of have to. It's like 4th and 2 at the plus 42-yard line. You don't want to punt because at best, you might gain like 20 yards of field position. But at the same time, you don't have a kicker with that range. You kind of don't have a choice. So you're either going for it, which means you're also risk giving the ball back around the 40-yard line. So I really think that was the purpose of going out there and getting Matt Gay. It's just, we'll have to see how that accuracy comes in. If he struggles against the New England Patriots, either in the practice or in the game or both, then I fully expect this team to probably have some competition in for him when we get back to Ashburn, back to business next Sunday. We'll see what happens. Definitely pulling for Matt. He's a good dude. Definitely, like I said, got a cannon for a leg, man. So if he can kick that thing straight, he can be really, really special. So we'll see what happens there. But that's everything that we're watching for Wednesday. Our next episode of Locked On Commanders, we'll have news and notes from that Wednesday joint practice. Washington Commanders and the New England Patriots getting together, getting down to business. In the meantime, if you've got questions or comments, you can text them directly to me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. For your next listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily Major League Baseball locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. And to the everydayers, I see you every day. I appreciate you every day. And I thank you for coming through, especially on today's episode. Until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.